All right. I need some more light in my house. So another question came up. Why does Black Lives Matter at all? Why? Why do we need to discuss it? Because apparently in this country, we've gone to a point. I said in my previous video that America hates itself at times, and we do. But the world hates itself. It's not the point. The issue is, and continues to be, that the mindset, and I'm going to go back to my previous video, I stated clearly that the mindset of the slave owners throughout history is that I'm in the position of authority, ownership power over the victim, the enslaved, whoever, that ethnic group or group of people that I have ownership over. So, a friend of a friend that deals with law enforcement wanted to ask some questions indirectly, and I said, just call me, ask me. He didn't want to. I respect that. The deal is this. I realize I do a lot of explaining when confronted with authority. It's not me going military. Part of it is, but the main problem is that I have to justify my existence at every step of my existence. I have to justify why I'm here. And it boggles my mind when you look at the amount of racism in the world, and it's, well, we don't want your culture here, but you're not in this position of authority to evict me. But then again, we have gentrification. And I want to talk about Hurricane Katrina. I'm not originally from New Orleans, so I cannot speak to what the daily life of New Orleans is like. Don't beat me for people that know me from New Orleans. The issue is that when I went to Dillard, New Orleans was predominantly a black and white issue. The other smaller ethnic groups, of course, were Indians and Asians, not too many Hispanics of any major renown. Now there's more Hispanics in New Orleans, and this is 11 years later after Katrina. But predominantly poor, low-income, black housing projects are now gone. When you cleanse something and when you take ownership of something, you take opportunity to remove someone that you don't like, that makes business sense to me. And again, I'm a business major. However, the human side of it is that, so they can't afford to live here, therefore you have expunged them out of your equation. And this is how racism with socioeconomics works. And let's give you an easy example. 1960s South, before the Civil Rights Movement, a black person owning a car was not uncommon. It wasn't unheard of. It was expensive to own a car in the 1960s. And when you look at the economic numbers, statistics of what the minimum wage was, how many hours these people working a week, and they had a car, yeah, it's not unheard of. But at the same time, 1960s and 1860s are 100 years apart. However, the slave ownership mentality and forced justification of a minority still exist. Why? Okay. White cop, back roads of Mississippi, with no witnesses, it's dark, I pull you over. Your life is in my hands. I have literally had a chance as a white police officer dealing with a black driver to play God. This is the same era when bus drivers in the South were issued pistols to deal with unruly customers or people in the vicinity of the bus. At what point do we devalue that other human being's life to the point where we just shoot them and throw them out the way? You're not going to jail. You're issued a gun. Therefore, you have ownership. You have the power to take life. You have the power to destroy someone's life given to someone. We're not talking about their mental status. We're not talking about their their character, or their ethical values. We're literally talking about, in that moment, if that person chooses to commit evil, they have the ownership to take someone's life. And I was reading stories in high school, growing up, and in college of people in authority, even blacks, doing it to other black people, that wanted to play God. They were so powerless in their own lives that they wanted to take a moment out to play God with someone else's life. Could have been your life, my life, your neighbor's life, anyone's life. They wanted to take a moment out of their time to play The most powerful thing in existence, creation and destruction. We don't even have to throw religion under the bus for this one. It's just that's where it's at. Now, let's scroll back a second. And I know I zoomed in, but let's scroll back. When we look at the problems that countries all over the world are facing, it comes literally down to the point of what do we want? How do we want it? What is it going to take to get it? And that's what really comes down when you look at all the factors of racism. Black lives matter. All lives matter. Don't support this political candidate. Don't support that political candidate. I'm not talking about politics. I want to talk about Black lives. And Japan seems real nice as my hashtag. The thing is that the Japanese culture and most Asian cultures value all life, even insects, down to an insect. And I remember one day a giant honeybee that was dying blew into the school window. And instead of the American mindset of, oh, it flies, it moves, it, kill it, destruction, i.e. destruction, they left the room and they wanted to let it die on its own, and then they would just go clean it up and move back on. Then the science teacher jumps in and is like, don't kill it, it's going to release a pheromone, it's going to bring its friends, we don't want to deal with that. And we have to spray chemicals, which are what? Harmful, destructive products of the environment. So me saying, okay, I can't kill it, let me get a plastic bag, poke a couple holes in it for oxygen, capture it, and then we'll let someone else deal with it. I appreciate Japan for teaching me to respect all life. Because the American mindset is, I'm going to kill it, be done with it, we're going to move on. It's interrupting me. Am I the most powerful force in creation? No. I can create thoughts, words, discuss, I can airbrush, I can paint, I can build, I can model, I can mold, but I cannot create life. So respect life. The deal is, we're still discussing Black Lives Matter because we're scared to admit wrong. We're scared to admit guilt, even though you didn't commit it. Example, I'm not going to go accuse a known family that owns slaves of doing evil. I can't hold the current generation of that family responsible. I can't. Doesn't make sense. For another example, people are blaming Barack Obama for things that happened in 2001. We had a news reporter blame him for what happened for September 11th. Blaming his foreign policy for September 11th is ludicrous. We all know Bush was in the president in the office at the time. So you're going to lay past guilt on someone who has not even assumed the job yet. That's like parents calling me, hey, I want my son to pass your class. School just started. Get the hell out of here. I had a parent call me, and her child had done no work from January to May. School ends the first week of June. Is there anything we can do? Makeup work, blah, blah, blah. No. You had all the opportunities to call me back, parent-teacher conference. He had makeup work opportunities to get it done. He chose not to. That is a choice. Back to the example of the cop in Mississippi. You have choices. Okay, maybe that's too deep for some people. Let's take a step back. Your parents didn't have to create you for you to be here. Therefore, the choice was made to engage in those activities that produced you. You're here, you're watching this, you're paying attention. Awesome. So now that you are a conscious, sentient human being with the ability to process right from wrong on whatever your moral compass is, why do we have to make the choice of deciding if one person, because they don't look like you, they're as dark as me, and they're black, their lives don't matter? That's the problem with humanity. The perception, what a lot of bigotry in the world is, you grow up in a small-minded community. You adapt to one train of thought. You don't question that train of thought because it's all you know. You never develop that initiative internally to question, to challenge, to scientifically analyze. It's like, okay, so if I put lemons and add sugar, I have sugar, and lemons. But if I add water or a liquid, I can make lemonade. Okay. So if two people come together and make a child, does that child inherently become racist? No. That's stupid. What I notice about children when I have to drive by elementary schools or international schools or any type of playground, I always notice that first time that children always go towards what is different. They do. It's natural. Children, babies especially, they put everything in their mouths. They want to put everything in their face, their eye, their ear, their nose, see how it works. That's the investigative nature of humanity. What happens is when we start using the most powerful word in the young child's vocabulary, yes and no. These two words dictate how that process works. And I remember watching a child in Japan who was picking up rocks and bringing them to her parents at a beach. Mom said, no, that's bad, that's dirty, that's gross, that's nasty. Of course, it's all in Japanese. Don't do it. But then she would pick up seashells and stones and things that were pretty and pleasant. Yes. Then there are children of different cultures on the beach. I know my family was a black family. I know that there was a Hispanic family and there was a white family. So when the child approached me and my friends, because this is when I was in Japan as an adult, the child was like, hi, how are you doing? And, of course, all in Japanese. And then Mom's like, no, Tommy, he's black. And I'm like, okay, you're one of those. Not all Japanese are racist, but that one particular mother, I don't know what her deal is. She told her child to come back and not bother us in Japanese. Not necessarily identifying race, but identifying or inferring in such a way that there's something wrong with the person because of the color of their skin. Then when the child ventured out later on that afternoon to the white family, same thing. Snatched that child back, was concerned, don't bother them. There's something inferring or interpreting body language is something I picked up on. And child came back. Hispanic family, their child came over to play. Apparently mom didn't have anything wrong with it. But again, notice that mom never directly said race. She just said who to bother and who not to bother. That's where we're getting at with Black Lives Matters. Back to the cop example. At what point in that society in the 1960s was it just okay to openly kill blacks? You lost the Civil War in the 1860s, so you have 3 generations of humanity that have gone through the industrial era, who've rebuilt the area, and now it's semi-prosperous, but it's still the misogynistic, racial, biased, religious bigotry of the 1960s in the southern United States. Last time I checked, because you are born one way doesn't give you the power or the process to go ahead and take someone's life because they're black. Now, a lot of people that want to argue racial bigotry and history with me, I always say, okay, it was a Ku Klux Klan before you got the Nazi Party. And they look at me like, yeah, that's true. Okay. Ku Klux Klan, we can go through every version of their origin and history, and I'm not going there. That's too long in this video. They wanted to maintain their key word that I will always repeat, their perception, their perceptive reality, their culture, and their expectations of what the social status of an African American was. Period. They want to reinforce it. We don't want you here. Go back to Africa. Hey, stupid. Your people brought me from Africa to build this country that I'm now a part of. My ancestors that were brought over were born here. Our cultural identity and history is this country you didn't want us here. And they look at me like, damn it, I have no ground left to argue with. I'm like, let's kick it up a notch. If you didn't want us here, you should have never brought us here to build this damn country. Should have built it your damn self. This got me thrown out of the teacher's lounge. Actually, I got up and left because, oh no, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're an Uncle Tom. I'm like, first and foremost, if you really read Uncle Tom's Cabin, Sambo was the person who lost self-identity. And there's a lot of lost people, and this is another topic I'll do in another video. Here's a short snippet. African Americans in the country that are locked into small socioeconomic statuses and in one community, regardless if it's a high-end or low-end community, everything that they grow up learning of what's expected of male and female gender roles and societal roles in those areas, they don't want to break out of. It's different, and I learned that in college. So me being a military kid living all over the world, they thought I was British, flat out. I'm like, no, I'm from Texas. I got a southern drawl, very slight hint of it. I have a lisp. I have a deep voice. I'm not British. I just don't use all that slang and all of the N-words and racial slurs or ethnic terms that you're used to hearing. So they thought I was a sellout. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm black. I'm going to be black to the day I die. I may not just be the black person you perceive to be right or necessary, but I exist. And fast forwarding to the situation, it's that the poisonous mindset of the Ku Klux Klan and racial bigotry in this country never stopped. It's been there since slavery was invented in the United States or was first dropped into the United States, and it continues to this day. It has stopped being blacks and Hispanics working farms for little to no wages. It is now migrant workers suffering because they can't have access to education because they're not citizens or undocumented, which is a horrifying situation of how humanity treats each other. We recognize you're human beings. We recognize you exist, but yet we don't want to give you citizenship. I remember all the history lessons and biblical lessons that citizenship was determined by birthplace, not paperwork. But that's just me. The issue is that we are still in the mindset of letting, and let's delete race out the equation for a minute. We have mentally unstable people wielding firearms on a daily basis in this country. We have more shooting deaths than we have births in some cities and states and communities around the world. We have more death and destruction and violence than we could ever really justify in front of any logical human being from another country. I remember being asked about this all the time in Japan. Did you have a gun in America? I'm like, no. I knew martial arts. Did you have a knife in America? I'm like, yeah, for a kitchen. That makes no sense. Don't ask those stupid questions. But when you come from the perception of being Japanese and looking at American reality, then it's no longer a stupid question because that's all the media sends to them from our country. And we have to dig deeper as a culture. We have to dig deeper as human beings in this country because people are still in the mindset of, now that I am in a position of authority and I have a firearm, I can play God and not suffer any penalties or blowback from concerned citizens. And the person that didn't want to be mentioned directly, that's from out of state, and he grew up in a police family, which is basically like growing up in a military family. Blue Lives Matter. We don't have to get along. We don't have to continue to be friends, but I'm going to tell you right now, if Blue Lives Matter, then I hope you're talking about the Blue Men Music Group that paint themselves blue. Because the military, when it was first invented, was a choice, a conscious decision, or you were pressed into service by your king or warlord. Being a police officer is a citizen's job. You are a citizen volunteering to enforce the laws, practices, and expected legislation of the area that we live in. You are not superhuman. You're not a bioman. You're not an X-Men. You're not Doctor Who. You aren't, pick any genre of hero you want to call it. You're not. until you do something heroic or worthy of that praise. I'm a teacher and people tell me you have the hardest job in my world. I tip my hat off to you. I'm like, I'm a human being trying to make a difference in the life of a child. I am not a hero. If that child thinks that I have done something to inspire them to live a better life and they consider me a hero, I will take the compliment. But don't throw me up on any pedestal because I teach. Don't throw me up on a pedestal. I'm a human being. I mess up. I make mistakes. I am not perfect. I'm not a hero. I just work. I want to always remain humble. So when the police officers say, well, we need to pass legislation to protect our lives, it's like you have a badge and a gun. You have the people in your department, your unit, and your city. You have the love and support of every public servant in that community, except when you cross that line and you start blatantly killing us. And a lot of those police officers running up under the Fraternal Order of Police or the Blue Lives Matter shield and saying that we need to be respected and protected, it's like, no, you really need to stop hiding. What have you done wrong? What sins or what crimes or what injustices have you committed so to the point where you lose sleep at night? You can't justify putting on that uniform in the morning and you have to drive those streets. And it kills me. It's like we have Law and Order. We have all these police shows where so much immorality takes place inside the building, and we watch this on television. Yet you want us to support you in the wake of these tragedies. And I'm 50-50 on it right now because it's like I grew up around police officers, military MPs, San Antonio police. I have friends that are NOPD. And it's like, I look at these men and I respect them for the work that they do, for the things that they take on emotionally, spiritually, and professionally, and the work that they do. I love and respect and admire them for that. However, I'm going to cut down to the bare minimum right now. You can't have good without evil. You can't have darkness without light. You cannot have love without some form of malice and hatred. And the issue becomes where an officer makes a mistake. Okay, you wrote someone a ticket, they really didn't need it, you just had a bad day. That's a forgivable thing. You followed someone home, that's an ethical thing. I have professional beef with you. I've been followed home. I have been profiled in my car. I've been followed to the point where I've driven from Alamo Heights to Midtown and a cop has followed me for 2 or 3 miles. That's more than enough time to run my plates, call it in. Even though they're not supposed to do that, get off and go about their business. I get it. The deal is this. How do you want me to support you when you're doing wrong? How do you want me to forgive you, pat you on the back, tell you it's okay, you shot 11 innocent people, but you're a good cop? I don't see it. I'll never see the justification for that logic. Going back to why I don't like New York. There's a young man that popped up in my news feed recently who had his genitals tore off of his body by a cop doing a stop and frisk looking for a hostile suspect. And that's heartbreaking. This young man will never have children. He will never enjoy the intimacies of our pastime of making love, having sex, whatever you want to call it, procreation. You're a cop having a bad day and you're doing a random stop and frisk. And it's been proven. Cops have come out and told the truth that their supervisors, their department heads are telling them to go out and target young black men. Just because I'm black. But then they want to flip the same page in media and say, well, we Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group. What? I exist? Look at my skin. I'm black as the day is long. Yet I'm not a human being. Oh, I'm sorry. We can also go back to the argument of the U.S. Constitution. Because when it was written by wealthy, white landowners. And they said that They, as white slave owners, landowners, entrepreneurs, and men of intellectual caliber, were human beings. I'm sorry. They completely scratched out minorities and they scratched out women from having equal rights. Granted, that was the 1770s. But they flat out said white men have rights. Everyone else is second, third, and bottom class citizens. Lynchings are still happening in the United States, and it's 2016. Let that roll on in your mind. We are still having lynchings in 2016. And it's not just limited to blacks. You have Hispanics that are disappearing under police brutality. You have Vietnamese, you have Asians, you have white men, black men. Every ethnicity is disappearing in this country due to some kind of violence that's not justified without provocation. And a lot of people don't want to, and this is why we keep having this Black Lives Matters discussion. Intellectual people that are now outside of survival mode. In my previous video, I discussed students in my classroom and how they live in survival mode. They don't care about the world's issues because it doesn't directly impact them at that second or on their daily basis. For those of you that can afford to wake up and not worry about where your next meal's coming from, you have a job to go to, you have money coming in, you are now in that discovery learning curve of Maslow's higher level hierarchy of thoughts. Now, you have people that don't want to progress into that hierarchy of learning and recognize you're a human being. And I go to this example. I was sitting at a bar when I first got back from Japan by myself. I just wanted to get out and go get a drink. Guy says, "Oh, I can't stand N-words. I can't stand black people." But the bartender is Hispanic, and I'm sitting less than 6 feet away. There's no music on right now. It's low because they're getting warmed up for tonight. I went early. But he loves the Patriots. I'm like, so wait. And I called him out. It's like, wait. Time out. You don't like black people. He's like, no, that's not what I meant. I'm like, no, you already said it. You don't like black people, yet you love the New England Patriots. You got a white quarterback, but half your defense and offensive line is black. One of your wideouts is black. One of your running backs is black. So if we take all the black people off your team, you have 15 guys left on the roster. You don't have a team. You don't embrace diversity. And going back to my argument about if you didn't want blacks here, why did you bring them in to build your country? That's some backward ass logic. Normally I don't curse. The logic is ludicrous. It's insane. It's half-assed. It doesn't make sense. So, you want to thank me for building your country, but now you want me to pack up and leave. If I could find a racist millionaire that wants to write me a check for $500,000 to leave, there's 8 countries I want to live in right now. I also want to pay off my student loans. I want a new car, and I want to have an apartment paid for so I can come back and visit my friends and family. That's how insane that argument says if blacks go back to Africa, or Mexicans go back to Mexico, or Asians go back to Asia. We're here. We were born here. We're citizens. Some of our people migrated. Some of us are immigrants. Me, myself, I was born in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm a Texan. I don't like Texas all the time. It's too damn hot. But I don't want to really leave. That's the issue that comes up when Black Lives Matter and people want to say all lives matter. Humanity matters, damn it. Humanity. You know, every human being. And if you don't believe me when I say racism has been indoctrinated into the American mindset, look at all of our cartoons from the 40s up to the early 80s. Jetsons, Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, the Ching Chang Chong Show. And I know it's not, it's the Chan family or something. Then you had that shark from Hasbro. Until we hit the mid-80s, the Flintstones were all white. The Jetsons was all white. Scooby-Doo was all white. If you didn't want black people in the future, you didn't have to sugarcoat it. Damn it. And then Hollywood hates itself. I really would love to find investors from all over the world that want to teach stories about people, heroes, and cultural identity from other ethnicities. For example, Disney's been on the ball, boy. Disney, of all people. They're covering every culture. They're covering every cultural storytelling aspect. We can't do any better than that. Apparently, is what Hollywood's telling the world. But you want to discuss Black Lives Matter, so let's stay on topic. If you want to stop discussing Black Lives Matters, treat everyone equally. Love your brothers and sisters from different cultures and civilizations. Embrace them. Accept them. Get out of your damn comfort zone. Go live in a foreign country. See how they deal with their minorities in their countries. Because it's funny that America is the only major country that has more people in prison than other countries have population totals. Yeah, we have more people incarcerated or in prison or in correctional facilities right here in the land of the free than other countries have entire populations. And you're telling me money is not at the root of all evil. Black lives matter. Period. Black lives will always matter. If you don't want to discuss it, but you want to make a change, you're doing better than most that want to sit there and discuss it till we're blue in the face. James Baldwin was discussing it in Harlem in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. To be a Negro and conscious and aware of what's going on at this point in our lives is to be enraged all the time. I'm not angry. I just accept that there are ignorant people that don't like me simply because I am me. I breathe. I have sleep apnea. I'm fat. I'm black. I like potato chips, as you can see down there. I like video games and computers. I like the Japanese culture. I love God. I'm Christian, but I have friends that are not. Doesn't stop me. But that's my rant today for why Black Lives Matter. And I had the school of racist when I was in New Orleans. Why can't y'all do anything right? Because the way the education system is set up, you don't teach us right. You teach us obedience, indoctrination, self-hatred, self-loathing, and lack of self-esteem. And I'll do the education video next week. I don't want to talk about education today. I'm still off for the summer. But here's the thing. Racism in this country comes in all shapes, forms, and exercises. Stay conscious. Stay woke. The other thing that boggles my mind is when these black men get up and try to second place black women. There's a famous saying that every African American has heard growing up. And if you didn't hear it, you saw it in books, you saw it in a movie. As an African American and I'm college educated with a bachelor